All right, I am speaking with conductor James Judd, who will be the guest conductor of the Santa Barbara Symphony coming up for their kind of Valentine weekend series of concerts on, let's see the dates, on Saturday evening at 8 p.m. in the Granada Theater in downtown Santa Barbara, at 8 p.m. Saturday, February 13th, and then Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock in the Granada Theater. This will be an all Rachmaninoff program. I'll want to ask James about that in a moment. Again, tickets, this little interview with James Judd is going out all over Southern California, so I want to make sure people in the Los Angeles area understand tickets are dirt cheap, $28 to $133 if you want to do the box. The Granada Theater box office number in Santa Barbara is area code 805-899-2222. And Maestro Judd's piano soloist will be Ian Parker, and we're going to hear a program that's the Rhapsody on a Theme of Paganini, and finally the composer's Rachmaninoff's last work, the Symphonic Dances. So, Maestro Judd, I had my opportunity to do a little bit of research. I know that you have newly been appointed conductor and music director of the Israel Symphony. Is that correct?
Yes, and even more newly of the Slovak Philharmonic as well.
I did see that. You beat me to the punch. And also the very venerable, I seem to remember.
Not happening for a while, but I'm very fortunate.
It's 2017, I think you begin that.
That's right, yes. I'm sorry, the connection is just breaking a little, so I didn't answer straight away. Yes, that's starting in 2017, and I'm just back. I just was doing concerts in Israel until 2 days ago. Yeah. And that's the wonderful orchestra, which is also the opera orchestra of Tel Aviv Opera, which I don't do that. Of course, Daniel Oren is their music director of the opera, but I do the concerts with the orchestra. And it's a great privilege to have that and the Bratislava one to look forward to. And the Little Orchestra Society in New York, where we do concerts for families, where I'm doing a gala tomorrow night with Deborah Voigt and William Wolfram, the pianist.
Well, the Little Symphony of New York, Little Orchestra of Society, is very, very famous. I think I even remember as about a 10-year-old that it had already a history in New York City.
Yes, it started in, 48, I think. And, like all organizations, right now striving to raise money to keep that tradition going, because they have a wonderful program in schools where they teach kids music through composition, for little children, and it's a lovely program. And then we give concerts free for kids, and the ones that can afford pay, and it's a wonderful thing. And I think it's so important today, more than ever before, that we get young people into the concert halls. We do special concerts for kids from 3 years upwards, because unfortunately in so many parts of this country and of the world, music is being taken away from the curriculum, which is a huge mistake, of course, because apart from anything else, learning music advances learning of other disciplines and studies, and helps concentration and a lot of other things, connects the two parts of the brain. I think it's important, yeah.
Yes, and we have spoken to this certainty about improving young minds, improving discipline of the two spheres of the brain, until we're all blue in the face, and still it's a struggle to keep.
I think there's a deliberate kind of not wanting to, from political people, from not wanting to understand it, because it's probably dangerous if you connect the two parts of the brain. You might actually teach people to think.
Well,
not that I'm a conspiracy theorist, but it is alarming, actually. Yeah. It is alarming.
Yes, and we could talk about that off camera, about the oligarchies and other things, and keeping the people, keeping the workers in their places, and so on and so forth. But here's a little bit of an esoteric question. I hope it will be seen as an esoteric question. I mentioned it to you a little bit before you began. I was going down your enormous catalog of recordings, and as I told you earlier, I discovered that you are the man who gave me Douglas Lilburn's 3 symphonies recorded with the New Zealand Symphony. Absolutely a revelation to me. Elgar 1, on and on and on. You have a vast repertoire. Bernstein, Jeremiah, Age of Anxiety. It's incredible. So yet what haunts me a little bit is there possibly any kind of something or other, speaking about brains connecting, that it gives perhaps a British conductor a little tiny bit of innate understanding of British music. Perhaps an American has a little better innate understanding of American music, or is that just all hooey?
I think there's something in it, but only very limited something.
Mm.
I come from the point of view that the greatest music is so easily understood by anyone. Now, you can argue about sometimes the language, the nuance of language, of course, affects the phrasing of a different composer, about the structure of the language, the rhythm of language. But I don't come from the point of view that, to understand Elgar Vaughan Williams, you have to understand the countryside, because it's like Sibelius is reminiscent of a certain landscape in a sense, but it's not the picture. It's rather the feeling, the spiritual feeling of the countryside, of the landscape. And I really don't think, some of the most interesting performances of Elgar come from. I sometimes think the British don't perform it so well as others. And Elgar was a great interpreter of his own music, by the way, but it's not conveniently an English kind of interpretation, funnily enough. And I sometimes feel with Elgar, he loved Italy, that he's a crazy Italian underneath, and he's got a Mahlerian complexity psychologically.
The orchestrations.
So what you saw wasn't what you get. So I understand the question, but I don't actually believe in it. Thinking Rachmaninoff, for example, this music is, we're going to play the Rachmaninoff, the symphonic dance is such great music, sometimes so dark and powerful and lively, interesting. These the two forces of the Dies Irae and resurrection in the last movement. Definitely, it's Russian. He's remembering chants. He's remembering bells. It's no question, but it's also American. It's written in America, and he's got the sound of the Philadelphia Orchestra in his head somewhere. So it's truly international, great international music, I think.
All right, now let me ask you the other question, because we all know that conductors, I think, aren't born with a baton in their hand. So I'd like to know what was the moment in your life when somebody put a stick in your hand and you said, this feels good?
Well, nobody did. I just was brought up in a very small English town, Hertford. It had 25,000 people, and there was no professional music in my family, but there was church music, and a little pipe organ, and all my relations sang in the little dreadful choir. There was an amateur orchestra in the town, met every Monday. There was an amateur choral society, an amateur operatic society. Same in the state school that I went to. So it was just natural that there was music around. And I fell in love with the sound of the orchestra through some old 78 recordings that I first grew up with, and then being taken to children's concerts up in London and feeling the power of the music. I felt, first of all, the power of the church organ, of the singing. It just moved me so much. And eventually, when did I start conducting? I suppose I lifted my hand without a baton to conduct the church choir at choir practice one day. That was the very first thing. And then a little bit of work with the school orchestra, I suppose. And I was absolutely not the right type to conduct at all. I was so shy and diffident. But I loved music. It moved me so much inside. And then and I went to college in London. I started an orchestra of musicians from all the London colleges. This is a long time ago now, before such a thing existed. And the very first thing we did was Mahler's Second Symphony.
Of course, because you were young and had no idea what you were doing.
And I have no idea, what drove me to do it. It was extraordinary. But, I just, I have a love and hate relationship with conducting. I think a lot of us do, really, because ideally the composer should be the conductor. That was how it worked. The composer would conduct his own music, and then great composers like Mendelssohn discovered other music that was neglected, Mahler as well. But composers should be conducting their own music today. Living composers should always conduct their own music, and since we represent mostly the dead composers, and it's a huge responsibility. But we have to be, bear that in mind. We're not the number one on the recording label. It's the composer, and and I also don't particularly enjoy having to stand in front of a crowd of people doing that. I like to play chamber music with musicians, with an orchestra. I mean, I don't, although maybe it looks otherwise when I'm up there, I don't know. But we're just one musician amongst musicians as conductors, and um, it's such an incredible thing when it works. You're in front of people, and you're just one, with your baton in your hand. Somebody else has a violin, somebody else has a triangle, and we all come together in that way. When you feel the music and the phrasing, conducting becomes so light. You don't really feel that you have a stick in your hand or that you're doing anything. You're just one with this group of spirits experiencing this music at the same time. And then when it works, the audience is part of that. It just goes in a wonderful circle through the hall and back. And that's what I love about it. And in a way, which great artist said that when the work is really, when you finished a great painting, you disappear in the painting. And I think the great pianist, the great violinist, the great conductor, they disappear into the music when it works, even if they're as flamboyant and charismatic as Bernstein. When it's all going well, they really truly disappear into the music.
This is in my old age what I'm discovering as a conductor as well. I'll be conducting an orchestra of retired professional musicians, emeriti Philharmonic, in a year or so. And we always grow as musicians, no matter what. I haven't really conducted in 30 years, but I am now very, very clear, as we all are as we get as we gain maturity. But the less is better. More and more, I realize from a conducting point of view, less is better. Things with wonderful musicians, things you guide a little bit, you coax a little bit here, but you basically stay out of the way of the composer's work, which is right there in front of you, and everyone is playing it well. I hope that made some kind of sense. Are you still there?
Hello.
Hello, sorry.
We lost our connection.
Somehow it happens, doesn't it, with Skype? But I think we'll just continue. If that's
good.
Because we got back connected very quickly. But that was, you had spoken, I think, to the idea that conductors are, as we learn more about how this thing, this organism works, we do not need to be in charge, if you will, so much.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
By the way, I wanted to ask if you have had our piano soloist coming up with the Santa Barbara Symphony on the 13th and 14th is the Canadian pianist, Ian Parker. And I wondered, he's doing the Rhapsody on the theme of Paganini, amazing, marvelous work.
Wonderful music.
Have you had an opportunity to work with Ian, or will this also be a first occasion?
It's terrible to say. I have a feeling we did work together a long time ago. But, sometimes one simply forgets these things. It's not to be rude, but if not, then I am looking forward to the first time. I'm sure. I hope if we did work together, it was successful. But I'm so looking forward to it, and I love these variations. And it's just such a joy to combine with a pianist in these. Yeah. There's so much fun and so much beauty and genius. I mean, poor Rachmaninoff sometimes, it was tough because he was not writing groundbreaking work in the sense of harmonic language, or he was not continuing Schoenberg's methods and whatever. But, he's one of the great, great composers. I mean, it's not just the romantic, the skill, the craft. I was just last week doing the first concerto with Olga Kern in Israel and realizing what a great, great work that was. So direct and spontaneous. And then a favorite of mine has always been the fourth concerto. When you hear
very seldom performed.
Very seldom. You hear him play it you hear him play his own music, you realize how autobiographical, how dangerous that music is, especially the fourth, and full of dark demons, which you find occasionally, in the variations, and you find certainly in places in the symphonic dances.
And the Isle of the
Some
Dead.
really, yeah, exactly, yeah. Great composer. So looking forward to working with Ian very much.
I think you just explained a little bit. I was going to ask you the question to just kind of describe the symphonic dances a little bit. Have we covered that territory adequately, or do you wish to add anything else about the symphonic dances? His last works, right? If I
Yes,
understand
yes.
correctly.
I mean, difficult to talk about music, isn't it? Always, but I mean, there's something in it for everyone. It's the rhythms are Stravinsky-like
Mm.
sometimes. The fact that he famously uses a saxophone for the most beautiful, soulful solo. I think I mentioned before the appearance of the Dies Irae. There's a very ecclesiastical side to this as well. Him remembering
Yes.
somewhere in his later years the church. Um, so it's this. There is almost in a Mahlerian sense a whole world in this particular composition. I think amazing and virtuoso writing for the orchestra to make it really work. It's a tough piece.
Very difficult. Very difficult.
Mm.
What about in that whole huge catalog of recordings I saw? No Rachmaninoff. Anything in the works?
No, nothing that I can remember. It's true. Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. I would love to record. Well, we'll see. See what you think of the symphonic dances.
And what? Can you give me a 3-year plan for the Israel Symphony? Do conductors indeed receive an assignment and then go, yes, now in the next 3 years I will do this, that, and the other thing?
Well, you do. I mean, in both cases, the Israel Symphony, and now just starting to plan, years ahead for the Slovak Philharmonic,
Yeah.
because they're so ahead of things. I like to look and see what an orchestra has played in the last 10 years and get a feeling of what's missing from the repertoire, what the audience is like. And also, I also make a point, as I did in New Zealand, of trying to get some New Zealand music onto every program. In Israel, we have an Israeli composer on pretty much every subscription program, and I'm now just starting to get to learn a lot of very interesting Slovakian music, Slovakian composers, finding out which composers alive are the most
Mm.
interesting, and not getting stuck in one kind of clique or other,
Yes.
but. It's an amazing opportunity for a musician to get to learn a culture and a huge responsibility, and then bring things that they don't know. And that's the fun of having a new music director, I guess, for the musicians, is bringing, maybe new light, a different way of doing some standard repertoire, but also stuff that they don't know, they haven't
And,
heard.
and Slovak Philharmonic has an ancient history. The sound is gone. Remember the sound? The Eastern
Mm.
sound is gone. Things have become more pasteurized, I suppose, in terms of orchestral sounds over the years, or do you feel otherwise?
Well, mm, whoops, we've broken up again a little bit, Dan. There
Well,
we are.
it,
Yeah, you were
yeah,
saying about
oh,
pasteurized sound, and I think, but they do still have a very distinct sound from that part of the
mm,
world. I
mm,
find that there are 120 musicians in that
mm.
orchestra. I mean, rotate a bit, and we've got a lot of wonderful experienced players, and now a lot of young blood coming from sort of Gustav Mahler orchestra from that region, and so it's a wonderful mixture of. But there is a certain approach to sound, I think, that comes from that area. You think of the Viennese orchestras, you think of the Czech. I was just recording Dvorak in Prague, and there's a very distinctive way, a transparency in the warmth of the
Mm.
sound that I find very interesting.
So something's still there. Something is still
Oh
there.
yeah, I
Oh,
think so.
absolutely. Yeah.
Just as there are in orchestras in US, you think still you can still smell the sound of the Philadelphia, the
Mm.
New New York, Phil, the Chicago, Cleveland, Boston. You can still you get a sort of feeling at the moment you mention the sound, don't you? We get a kind of aura of what the sound still is, I think.
James Judd, thank you very, very much indeed for giving me a few minutes of your time. I'm going to run through the credits just once more so that people throughout greater Southern California, not only are they going to enjoy very much this interview, I love the way you have explained the life as a conductor. It's marvelous. And as you know, I owe you a big favor for your recording of the symphonies of Douglas Lilburn.
I'm thrilled that you like them. I really am, and let's hope others will listen to them.
James Judd will be guest conductor of the Santa Barbara Symphony for kind of a a Valentine's weekend concert pair on Saturday, February 13th at 8 o'clock in the evening, and Sunday, February 14th at 3 in the Granada Theater in downtown Santa Barbara. We're talking about the Santa Barbara Symphony Orchestra. The guest soloist is the wonderful Canadian pianist Ian Parker. It's going to be a complete and all Rachmaninoff program, only two works apparently. The Rhapsody on a Theme of Paganini with Ian Parker, and the composer's last work, the Symphonic Dances that we have discussed, and I hope the conversation has whetted appetites. Let me just run by ticket information just one last time, and then I will say goodbye to James Judd in New York City. Tickets $28 to $133 at the Granada Theater box office in Santa Barbara. The telephone number is area code 805-899-2222. James Judd, thank you for sitting through that.
It was great to talk to you.
Great fun.
I wish it was longer.
Good, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah, me too.
Lots of fun. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you for your time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.